For many Lions fans, the start of free agency has not gone the way they wanted it to, as Brad Holmes has only made really one major move, and it was not for an edge rusher, and it's leaving them on a massive edge wondering, what's next? We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, I know that when it comes to this free agency period, this has not gone the way that a lot of Lions fans would have wanted it to go. And I know that because it has not gone the way that a lot of them would like it to go, it's leaving them asking questions. It's making them anxious. They're like, okay, what is Brad Holmes doing? What is he going to do? When are we going to hear news about Brad Holmes making another move? Because realistically, Brad Holmes has not done a whole lot when it's come to this free agency period. Very first day of free agency, as far as the negotiating aspect was concerned, went out, signed DJ Reed to a 3-year, $48 million contract. That was a big splash. That was a big signing. Definitely was able to replace Carlton Davis for a much cheaper deal. DJ Reed is a better cornerback. That was all great, grand, and glorious. I loved the signing. I've said as much. But for a lot of Lions fans, they're like, hey, again, that's a nice signing. It makes sense. But that's not what we're waiting for. We want to hear when we're going to get an edge rusher. That's what they want to hear. That's what they're waiting to hear about, because that to them is the ball game. That to them is where everything starts and finishes. And when you think about it, it all comes down to what happened previously before free agency even started and what has happened since free agency has started. Which, when we take a look at it, Brad Holmes re-signed Marcus Davenport to a very team-friendly 1-year deal. He then released Zadarius Smith. And then once free agency started, there were rumors, there was strong reporting coming out from, Adam Schefter and a couple of others that the Lions were very high on trying to get their hands on Josh Sweat, and that, apparently what happened was at the 11th hour, the Cardinals swooped in, apparently gave him a better deal. He decided to go to Arizona. And then over the course of, the next couple of hours, 24, 48 hours, we then lost out on Joey Bosa. We lost out on Chase Young. Bosa going to the Bills. Young decided to stay with the Saints. So it's like, okay, when you take a look at that, a lot of the guys that the Lions faithful would have wanted to see Brad Holmes make a move for, or, seeing what Brad Holmes had done prior to the whole free agency start, they're like, okay, what the hell is going on here? We cut Zadarius Smith, who last year was a very good edge rusher for us, had 4 sacks, was one of the top 10 in terms of pass rush win rate. We don't get Josh Sweat. We don't get Bosa. We don't get Young. We bring back an injury-prone player in Davenport. What's going on there? Then they find out that the Lions aren't bringing back Ife Melifonwu. They then find out that, we're not bringing back Kevin Zeitler. And it's like, okay, we're losing a lot of guys, or we're missing out on a lot of guys that to the fan base, they would be like, okay, these are guys that we should have brought back, or we should have brought in to help out the roster to make that Super Bowl run. And then everybody's like, well, man, what the hell is going to happen? What are we going to do? I've heard several fans that are like, man, it is way too quiet. Like, the Lions are just not doing anything. In fact, so far, the only thing that the Lions have done of absolute noteworthiness is they signed DJ Reed and they brought back Levi Onwuzurike. That so far has been it. Other than that, the Lions have been ridiculously quiet when it comes to the whole free agency frenzy. Then, on top of that, then there's the news that's now come out about Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals are now upping the requesting price in order to get Hendrickson. It used to be either a low 2 or a high 3 was what they were looking for. Now what they're looking for is a first-round pick. And the reason I think that happened is probably what happened is when the news came out that all they were looking for was a low 2 or a high 3, they probably got a lot of interest, probably got a lot of bidders, and they're like, okay, obviously there is a very high demand for this player, which means since we control the supply, the player that's asking for this, we can increase the price because high demand means high price. So knowing that, I'm pretty much going to tell you this. Lions are probably not going to trade for Trey Hendrickson. And as much as I would have loved to have had it happen, I just don't see Brad Holmes trading our first-round draft pick to get Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson is a great player. He's one of the best in the NFL. But I don't see Brad Holmes trading away our first-round draft pick. I just don't see that happening. Which then brings us back to free agency. Who's the best remaining free agent edge that's out there right now? Well, for lack of a better, way to put it, it's the guy that we cut. It's Za'Darius Smith. Za'Darius Smith is the best edge rusher in terms of pass rush win rate, in terms of the fact that he's familiar with the team already, in terms of the fact of all the stuff that as a GM you would want your player that you're bringing them in to be. He's a culture fit. He understands the team. He's already built a rapport with the players and with the coaches that are there. But it kind of is like, okay, we already cut this guy. So unless we're planning on bringing him back on a lesser deal, highly unlikely that, the Lions are going to reach back out to him. But obviously people are going to like, well, David, there's obviously other guys out there, right? Well, yeah, there are other guys. You could go with Judon. You could go with Dante Fowler. You could go with Draymond Jones. You could go Von Miller. The problem is each one of those guys has something about them which raises red flags. With Judon, it's the fact that he's getting old and the fact that, he hasn't exactly been that top-tier edge rusher that would really be the thing that we want to make the difference. There's nothing against Matt Judon. He is a solid edge rusher. But is he better than the guy we had in Za'Darius? No, he really isn't. When it comes to Dante Fowler, he had a resurgent year this previous year, but compared to his other years, it's kind of like, okay, what version of him are we going to get if we were to sign him? When it comes to Draymond Jones has been average at best. He's not been great. He's not been terrible. So it's like, okay, he's an average edge rusher. Do you really want to sign him to a big deal? And then with Von Miller, it's like, okay, Von Miller is a big-time name. But Von Miller at this point in his career, he's 36 years old. He'd probably be a specialized pass rusher because at 36 years old, you're probably not going to get much use out of him otherwise. So he'd almost be like a souped-up James Houston. So then the question becomes will Brad Holmes sign any of these guys? I'm going to be honest with you. The best answer I can give is, I don't know. And I don't like that answer because it's not an answer that I know Lions fans are going to like. It's not an answer I like because it's like, listen, I like knowing or at least having a semblance of knowing, okay, the Lions could, in essence, make this move or they could, in essence, make that move. But since Za'Darius Smith is the best overall edge rusher that's out there remaining on the free agent market, like I said, is it possible a potential reunion could be in the works? It's possible. Anything's possible. We've seen the Lions cut players and bring them back. But obviously, whatever the issue was that led to his release in the first place would have to be resolved first, which, from what we're hearing, the issue was the $5 million or $7 million signing bonus. So obviously, there would have to be a reworking of a contract in there to where obviously Za'Darius Smith takes less money, which would probably be part of the reason why he got cut in the first place, is because he wasn't willing to take less. So if the Lions were to bring back Zadarius Smith, chances are it's probably going to happen later on down the road, probably in the second wave of free agency that happens typically after the draft. Which then brings me into what I think Brad Holmes might be doing. Because I've almost come to the realization that the idea that what Brad Holmes might decide to do is he might decide to do one of two things. He might decide to pull what he did last year with the edge rushing class this year that he did with the cornerback class last year. Because remember, last year he drafted 2 cornerbacks back to back. He drafted Terry and Arnold in the first round, and then he drafted, Rakestraw in the first round, or in the second round, pardon me. So it's possible that Brad Holmes might decide to go that route. Might decide to get a decently, high-quality player in the first round at pick 28, and then get another decently high-quality player in the second round if it's available. That's one potential option I could see Brad Holmes doing, because again, what Brad Holmes said specifically at his meeting at the end of the year, kind of like going into this offseason, is he's like, listen, we're not going to avoid the edge rusher. We're not overlooking it. We are trying to add more to it. Well, to me, it almost seems like what the Lions are trying to do is they're trying to go younger, but they're also trying to find guys that they can build around. They want to find guys that they can bring in, build, mold to their culture, and say, hey, we want you to follow, we want you to identify with what it is we're trying to do here, rather than bringing in a guy that's like, oh, well, I've been set in my ways for a long time here. This is what I'm trying to do. Because think about it. They didn't bring back Kevin Zeitler. He wanted more money, apparently, because he goes and signs with, I think it was the Titans, for a 1-year, $9 million deal. That's, I think, substantially more than what the Lions gave him last year. Obviously, Zadarius had 2 years left on his deal, and obviously, as I just stated, the probable reason that he got cut was because he didn't want to take less money. I think that what the Lions are trying to get across here is that, listen, we don't have a problem paying players. But one, we want to feel that the price is right. But also, two, we want our guys. And one of the things I think that falls in that line is like, hey, we're not always going to give you top end dollar. We're wanting to find guys that might be willing to take a little bit less than other guys, so that way we can spread out our resources to the rest of the team. So that might be one thing that Brad Holmes is trying to do, is double dip in the draft. The other thing he might decide to do is that now we know what our compensatory pick is for, Aaron Glenn. I think it's pick 102 in the second round. He might be deciding to trade up and get a guy that he really wants, because we've seen Brad Holmes do that as well. There have been times in the past where it's like, hey, he's offered a trade package, moved up several spots to go and get a guy he really truly wants, and that's what he decides to do. And let's also remember something here. The Lions are also going to get a comp pick for losing Carlton Davis. I think it's a 4th round pick. So the Lions are not yet done in getting compensatory picks. And I don't know if they're going to get a compensatory pick also for, Kevin Zeitler. I'd have to check the rules a little bit more specifically on that, but if we got a pick for Carlton Davis, who was a 1-year stopgap for us, I wouldn't be at all surprised that we wouldn't get one for Kevin Zeitler as well, because he was just as integral to our offense as Carlton Davis was to our defense. And Zeitler played more games than Carlton Davis did. So I'm trying to think and propose ideas as to what I think Brad Holmes might be planning next. Because I know a lot of Lions fans, they're like, okay, what are we doing here? What's the next move? What's the next announcement? And I have to be sincerely honest with you. If it comes down to it, I think we're again kind of going to a free agency period where the Lions are probably going to, bring back a lot of their own guys. They're probably only going to sign maybe a couple of guys in free agency, try and flesh out the roster, and then they're going to go into the draft, and then that's where they're going to really make their dough. That's where they're really going to make their bank, because that's what the Lions have been doing. They typically get a couple of guys in free agency, flesh out the roster, either solid veterans or guys that can come in and be instant starters for them, and then they go through the draft and find difference makers. They go to the draft and try and find guys that they can build culture, they can build with, they can nurture culture with, all these different things, and that's what I think what Brad Holmes is doing, because from what I've seen so far for the start of free agency, it doesn't seem that Brad Holmes is interested as much in going that route, which tells me there's got to be something in the draft that he really, really likes, based upon what he has seen on tape, based upon what the scouts have shown him, because the fact that Brad Holmes has not jumped almost instantaneously on some of these other guys tells me that, okay, he might have been really interested in Josh Sweat. When he couldn't get him, he's like, okay, I'm going to avert my focus and we're going to go back to this route. Because, again, the report was that the Lions definitely were interested in him, and it was looking like he was going to come here until the Cardinals swooped in and obviously, gave him a better deal or whatever the case was. So that's what I'm thinking's happening. I'm trying to keep you guys updated. I'm trying to give you guys my thoughts to let you know what you could potentially expect. But I got to be honest with you. Since I'm not Brad Holmes, I'm not sitting in the room, I don't know what the plan is, this is me giving my best speculative guess. Because based off of everything that's happened so far, that's what I think the Lions are doing. Because so far, they've only brought in one guy that was not on the team from last year that's of any substance, other than I think there's that nose tackle that they just brought back. They just brought in. I don't know too much about him. I think his last name is Lopez or something like that. But chances are he's most likely going to be either a depth piece or a rotational starter with frickin' McNeil and, Reeder. Whereas Reed is definitely going to be a starter because of the money they gave him and because he's replacing Carlton Davis. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to get this episode out there, give you guys my thoughts. You guys will obviously let me know what you guys think. You'll obviously let me know what you think also about the whole situation with Brad Holmes, what he's been doing, what he's not been doing. So let's just keep this in perspective. Let's let it float around the cranium for a little bit, see what you guys think. Having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things. Like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. Because the more we do that, the greater the channel grows and spreads. And with that being said, I hope everybody got something out of this content, whether they learned something new, thought of something new, or if you just enjoyed it. I truly hope that's what the case was. Whether it's your first time watching me, you guys have been watching me forever and a day. I also hope everybody out there has got something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.